Hello, true crimerers. So guess what? I am now dipping my toe into YouTube. And I figured the very first case I should officially cover on here is the case that inspired my passion for true crime. And that is the case of Steven Avery. Yes, this is the groundbreaking case that was on Netflix in the Making a Murderer show. To those who don't know, my page's name, Making a True Crimerer, is a play on to Making a Murderer because, well, it's my favorite. So let's get into it. Who is Steven Avery? Steven Avery was born on July 9th, 1962 in Manitowoc County, Wisconsin. He grew up in Gibson, Wisconsin, where his family owned an auto salvage yard. Steven, growing up, was considered to be a bit of a slow person. He was tested in 1985, and his IQ was lingering around 70. He also got in trouble with the law on numerous occasions, to the point where the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department basically considered Steven Avery, well, a piece of garbage. To them, he was a pest, and he just needed to go away. In 1981, Steven committed a burglary of a local bar, and he did so with a friend of his. He actually admitted to this crime, and he was convicted for it. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison, but he only ever actually served 10 months. Now, this next one is kind of the big one where a lot of people kind of like to gravitate back to in terms of saying that Steven is guilty of later crimes. So, in 1982, he and some of his friends were having a bonfire. Steven would grab a cat, he poured gasoline on the cat, and they threw it directly into the bonfire and just sat there and watched the cat die. Again, Steven Avery admitted to this crime, and he was convicted of animal cruelty. He would be released from prison for this crime in August of 1983. Now, this next one is kind of the catalyst to the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department and their last straw with Steven. So, in 1985, Steven would drive one of his cousins kind of off the road. And then he got out of his car and pointed a gun at her. He did so because he thought that this cousin, that she had been telling people that he would pleasure himself in front of her. Now, this particular cousin, well, she was dating a sheriff's department deputy. Steven would be arrested for this crime, and once again, he admitted he did it. He was then sentenced to 6 years in prison for this crime. Before he actually goes to prison for that case, in July of 1985, a woman by the name of Penny Biernston was taking a jog down Lake Michigan Beach when a man out of nowhere grabbed her and drug her over to a more desolate location on the beach, and he would sexually assault her. He did not harm her in any other way, and he let her go. Penny, while in a hospital bed, would give a description of her assailant. Now, at this point, based on the description of the man, the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department likely believed, or at least wanted to believe, that it was Steven Avery. The police artist drew this composite drawing, which looks almost identical to the Steven Avery mugshot from previous years. If you overlay his composite drawing over the actual mugshot, it is literally identical. So where was Steven Avery when this crime occurred? Well, he was 40 miles away in Green Bay. Did they confirm he was there? They sure did. 16 different eyewitnesses placed him at the location he said he was while Penny was being sexually assaulted. They had receipts from where he was, time-stamped and everything. They arrested Steven Avery anyway, charged him with the sexual assault and kidnapping, and he would go to trial. He was convicted, and then he was sentenced to 32 years in prison. Fast forward a few years, 1995, a neighboring county calls the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department and says, We have a man here who has confessed to a sexual assault that occurred in Manitowoc back in 1985. But the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department, they say, nah, we've got our guy, you're good, see ya! Fast forward now to 2002. The Wisconsin Innocence Project takes on Steven Avery's case. Back then, they did collect evidence off of the victim's body, and they had a pubic hair, one strand of pubic hair. They ran the DNA. Did not match Steven Avery. It basically confirmed that Steven Avery did not sexually assault Penny Biernston. Who did the DNA match? Well, the guy that in 1995 confessed to committing the crime. You know, the guy where the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department said, nah, it's not him, we got him. That man's name was Gregory Allen. Now, to be fair, he does look pretty similar to Steven Avery. By 2003, Steven Avery is released from prison and exonerated for the sexual assault. He files a lawsuit against Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. In 2005, that's exactly what he does. He is suing them for $36 million. And this is a small town sheriff's department. $36 million would completely cripple them. October 31st, 2005, right in the middle of this big deposition lawsuit. Local freelance photographer Teresa Halbach would go onto the Avery property. Teresa Halbach was born on March 22nd, 1980 in Kaukauna, Wisconsin. Photography was her passion. She loved to do it. And at this time, she was freelancing for several different people, but specifically for this particular job, she was working for Auto Trader. Now, she had gone to the Avery salvage yard numerous times prior to take photos of various vehicles. Allegedly, she had some concerns over Steven Avery. She felt kind of uncomfortable to be around him. Right smack in the middle of the afternoon, she is seen on the Avery property taking a photo of a van. And then after that, Teresa Halbach is never seen again. It would not be until a few days later that her family reported her missing. The kind of concerning thing is that her roommate did not report her missing at all, did not tell the family that she hadn't been home in a couple of days, which for Teresa is extremely unusual. She is always home every day, always goes to bed in her own room every night. She's reported missing, and then the investigation into her whereabouts begins. Now, her daily planner was missing, but there was a page from that daily planner that was found in her boyfriend or her ex-boyfriend's, Ryan Hilligus, in his possession. How he had it is still unknown. Kind of odd, considering the daily planner should have been on her person because that is what she used to go to her appointments. On that daily planner page, it said that she was going to the Avery property and then she had another appointment after that, an appointment she never showed up to. A couple of days into the investigation, a witness comes forward to say that they think they saw the missing woman's vehicle, a Toyota RAV4. This witness would go to a local convenience store, I believe, where he sees Sheriff's Department Deputy Andrew Colburn. He tells him that he thinks he may have seen the car, and this was off the side of the road, away from the Avery property. And then also around that same time, Andrew Colburn makes the infamous phone call. He is recorded calling the deputy's office, saying, is this license plate, whose car does it match? And then the other person says, oh, it's the missing woman, Teresa Halbach's vehicle. And then he says, okay, and then he hangs up the phone. Now, why on earth would he make that phone call if he wasn't staring at the back of her vehicle? He's never stated why he made that phone call. But then, during a massive search party, one of the search party members, her name is Pam Sturm, she's actually directed to go towards the Avery property. They ask for permission. They say, yeah, go ahead, you can search on here, go for it. Look at this photo of the salvage yard. There are thousands of cars on that property during that time. It takes Pam Sturm and her daughter less than 5 minutes to find Teresa Halbach's RAV4 on the Avery property. The RAV4 is cleverly hidden amongst some branches and debris. It looks like, hey, I'm over here. Looks like it's calling itself to attention. This is enough for local police to get a warrant to search the property. Now, according to one of Stephen Avery's nephews, Bobby Dassey, Bobby says that around the time Teresa Halbach was on the property, he saw her walk towards Stephen's trailer, and then Bobby got into his own vehicle, and then he took off. He claims he was going hunting that afternoon, and the only alibi he had was his stepfather, Scott Tadich, who says they just saw each other passing in the road. So basically, they were each other's own alibis. Police searched the RAV4. Lo and behold, they find some interesting evidence. In the back of the vehicle, they find like blood splatter that indicates possibly someone was either hit over the head near that area or anywhere in the body, or they were thrown in after the fact, which would like spray blood from their wound. That blood would eventually match that of Teresa Halbach. They also found blood behind the key ignition. We test this blood, turns out it matches Stephen Avery. Do me a quicksy-poo, looksy-poo here. If you look at the photo and you look at these two blood stains, it looks as if someone dipped that in like a Q-tip in blood, popped it, swiped it, popped it, swiped it. It also does not look like something that naturally would occur if you are turning a key and you would get that perfect kind of swipe like that. They also did not find any of Stephen Avery's fingerprints in the vehicle, suggesting maybe he was wearing gloves. Which is it? Was he wearing gloves, which left no fingerprints, or was he not wearing gloves, which would be how he left blood behind? You can't be both. They also found, I shit you not, what they claim is sweat DNA on the hood latch of the RAV4. There is no such thing as sweat DNA. That being said, sweat obviously runs over your skin, and it can carry like skin cells, which do or can produce DNA. That DNA also allegedly matches Stephen Avery. The Calumet County Sheriff's Department was put in charge of this investigation because they felt that the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, it would be a conflict of interest should they investigate this, as they're they're in the middle of a lawsuit with Stephen Avery. They were basically ordered not to be involved in this case, but they were heavily involved in this case, and nobody seemed to give two flying shits. They searched Stephen Avery's trailer, okay? They find nothing of relevance. They do find, I believe, a gun that's like hanging above like on a wall that maybe he used that to kill her with. They searched the trailer a second time. Maybe they missed something. Didn't really find anything of relevance. No blood, no scratch marks anywhere, nothing to indicate, a struggle took place in this room. Okay, now let's search it a third time. They search it a third time. Nothing. Well, you know what they say, fourth time is definitely the charm, right? Search it again, nothing. Okay, great. You know what? We might have missed something those first 4 times. Let's look one more time. Fifth search, finds nothing. Great. Okay, we're done now, right? We're done with this whole search? No, let's do it one more time. Okay, 6th search. Whole lot of nothing. Great. One more time, shall we? We gotta find something. Great. 7th time they searched his trailer. The 7th time they find something. They find the Holy Grail. They find Teresa Halbach's key to her RAV4. Just laying on the floor. Just big old blue bright keychain just laying on the ground. Nah, I guess it's hard to miss. Or, well, apparently it is very easy to miss, actually. Well, maybe it fell off the bookcase. Okay, did you not search the bookcase the first 6 times? Did you not search behind the bookcase? Either it suggests they're really bad at their job, or that key was planted. They test the key for DNA. Guess what? They find astronomical amounts of Stephen Avery's DNA all over that key. They find way more of his DNA than the actual owner of the key, Teresa Halbach, who used that key every single day. Many years later, they would run a test where Stephen would hold a similar key for like 15 minutes. And that came back with a very minute amount of his DNA left behind on the key. Now, they find what they think are human remains in the burn pit outside of Stephen Avery's trailer. They say these might actually be bones. So the first person you should call is the medical examiner. Actually, I'm sorry, not should call. The first person you are required to call is the medical examiner. They didn't call her. She only heard about it in passing. She went to the crime scene. They said, "Get out of here. You're not going to work here. You're not allowed here. Go away." You're saying there's human remains. I am required to be here. I need to be here. They wouldn't let her look at the bones. None of it. Later on, when she tried to testify in court, the DA successfully managed to get her testimony nixed. Then they find bones in a burn barrel, which is across the property. Again, more bones, what looks like maybe some burnt camera parts, other miscellaneous things, maybe a cell phone in there. Also, on a nearby quarry just off the property, they find another burn pit with what look like human bones in it. Now, all three sections where bones were found were poorly mishandled, which means by the time that anyone of relevance could look at them, now they had no way of determining if those bones were moved at any point. So now they had no idea where the bones originated. Now at this point, Stephen Avery is arrested for the murder of Teresa Halbach. There's a slight problem. They don't really have the narrative. Like, what happened? How did this come to be? Well, lucky for them, one of Stephen Avery's other nephews, Brendan Dassey, 16-year-old kid, he allegedly told another family member that he helped hide a body. Because now the police get to interview Brendan Dassey. And enter the infamous confession. They questioned the 16-year-old kid for hours without a parent present in the room. Brendan Dassey gives a million different stories. He answers their questions a million different ways. None of it seems to be matching what they want to be the case. So eventually they turn into this like leading the witness kind of thing. They start to kind of give him vaguely the answers they're looking for or hint towards what they want him to say. And him, also with a very low IQ, not having any understanding of what's actually going on here, he kind of just goes along with it. At one point they ask him, "Where did you shoot her?" And he says, "In the body." And they go, "No, like, where on the property did you shoot her?" And he gives like different answers until eventually he kind of narrows it down to they shot her in the garage. Now, police search the garage. There is absolutely no blood evidence. There's no trace of Teresa Halbach there at all. Brendan also suggests that initially it started off with him and Stephen Avery in Avery's trailer, and they tie Teresa up to the bedpost. Again, there's no scratch marks on the bedpost to indicate any kind of sign of a struggle. And then he says, well, then we cut her throat, we cut her hair, they cut her all over. But again, there is no blood found anywhere in the bedroom, in his entire trailer. There's no traces of Teresa Halbach at all inside of his trailer, which would indicate that Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey are what? The greatest crime scene cleanup crew in the history of the world? Brendan, during his confession, thinks he gets to go back to class afterwards. That's how much he had no idea what he was doing. He would be arrested for the murder. Enter Ken Kratz. Ken, who looks like a disgruntled walrus who's constantly suffering from a shellfish allergy. He's the Calumet County District Attorney who is basically going to be in charge of this case. the very next day after Brendan's confession, he goes on camera and recites the entire confession to the media. Now, this apparently is not illegal, but it is highly unethical. Essentially what this does is it taints the jury pool, because eventually Brendan Dassey's confession would not be allowed in Stephen Avery's trial. But it's not really needed to be, because the whole media knows about the entire confession, so any person who's on the jury from the state of Wisconsin, well, they heard the confession, so they don't really need it. Brendan Dassey is assigned an attorney who, I shit you not, literally hires someone to question Brendan to just get him to confess again. To just say, just confess you did it, write down your confession, draw cute little pictures on how it happened, which Brendan does. He eventually would be removed from Brendan's case. He would also later on go to jail himself for other reasons. During the trial of Stephen Avery, Kenny the fucking fuckity titty licker Kratz, he gets up and says, only Stephen Avery committed this. Yeah, he sounds like that to those who don't know. Only Stephen Avery committed this crime. Only he committed this murder. He also goes on to say that I'm not going to spend 20 seconds on those bones found in the quarry pit because they're not human bones. Because to acknowledge the bones in the quarry pit would also acknowledge the fact that Teresa Halbach was not killed on the property, which would destroy the entire prosecution's case, that the moment she got on the property, she never once left it, including the car. Stephen Avery's attorneys also weren't really allowed to argue that anyone else could have been a suspect, like Bobby Dassey, who is a very viable suspect. He had searches on his computer, I shit you not, of the grossest things. He was looking up like decapitated women, murdered women, you know, naked young folk, just an obscene amount of stuff, that there would be a binder full of these horrific search entries that apparently Stephen Avery's attorneys weren't allowed to use or even know about. Not to mention the fact that Bobby Dassey's only alibi is his own stepfather, whose alibi is Bobby Dassey. Later on, they would basically go on to prove that Bobby Dassey could have very easily taken Teresa Halbach off of the property, maybe made an advance at her, and she denied him, and then he reacted by killing her. Allegedly. This is all just allegedly. This is all from Making a Murderer, by the way. Okay, not my thoughts. Maybe. Stephen Avery would be convicted of the murder of Teresa Halbach, and he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Remember how Ken Kratz said that only Stephen Avery committed this murder? Well, that's only until Brendan Dassey's trial, because he got a separate trial. Then he says, well, Brendan also helped kill her. So, which is it, Kenny? You little fuck? Brendan Dassey would be convicted of the murder as well, and he was sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of parole that he could apply for in 2048. Now, Dassey's conviction was overturned because the confession was considered coerced. But then the state said, let's try this again, and they managed to weasel their way into this to get his conviction reinstated by a higher court, and Brendan Dassey is still in prison to this very day. Stephen Avery would get his new attorney, a post-conviction attorney named Kathleen Zellner. She is a queen. She is the ultimate badass, and I want to meet this lady because she's amazing. She has gotten 20 convictions overturned. She's saved people from death row. She was also involved in another case. If you watch the documentary called Dream Killer, she was very involved in that conviction being overturned. So, and I forgot to mention this, I believe, but after Brendan Dassey's confession about Teresa Halbach probably being shot probably in the garage, maybe, I don't know. They lo and behold, they found a bullet in the garage, even after they searched it all those months prior, and never found a thing. But this time they did. Great. She took that bullet and she took it to an independent, forensic person, and they found that the bullet had traces of wood on it, which means it passed through like a barn wall or some kind of a garage wall, what have you. And it barely or really didn't show any signs of human skull or human bone on it, which would indicate that the bullet was fired after the fact just to place a bullet on the scene. She's also adamantly been trying to get the Bobby Dassey computer search history, looked at by the higher courts, but they're like, it's clear. Then she wanted to have the bones retested for, DNA and whatnot. Well, guess what? The police, they gave away every piece of bone fragment to Teresa Halbach's family before Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey could exhaust all of their appeals. And that's kind of a no-no. But here's the kicker. They also gave the family the bones they found at the quarry pit. If those weren't Teresa Halbach's remains, like they said, why would you give those to the family? If you are 100% certain those are not even human bones, why are you giving them to the family? But now there's no bones to test. They have nothing. Stephen Avery is still in prison. Brendan Dassey is still in prison. If anyone could clear Stephen Avery's name in this, it's Kathleen Zellner. I want to point out that I am not a Stephen Avery fanboy. As a matter of fact, I don't like him. He had a very icky past, and it's like the whole cat thing. That would make me just despise the man. But that does not mean that he murdered Teresa Halbach. You have to prove a person's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. There is too much reasonable doubt in this case. The very fact that you could put the murder in someone else's hands, like a Bobby Dassey, for example, that's reasonable doubt. Her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, could have done it. Why did he have the planner page that she would have had in the car with her? Why wasn't he ever investigated? Why were their bones found in several different locations? And where was the point of origin of those bones? Where were they originally burned? How come there was no trace of Teresa Halbach anywhere in Stephen's trailer? In the garage, there was no signs that she was killed on that property other than what Brendan Dassey confessed to. I'm not saying that Stephen Avery 100% didn't kill her. I'm saying that I don't feel confident that he did. And I don't know how you could confidently say, yep, he did it. Think of the circumstances. He is right in the middle of a lawsuit against the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department where he could be awarded up to $36 million, which would cripple the Sheriff's Department, which would get many of them fired, could get them prosecuted for things. Well, we need a reason to put him away. They did it before. They put him away in 1985 or something they know he didn't commit. Why, I wouldn't put it past him now. Too convenient that a body ended up on his property right as he's basically successfully suing them. It was not looking good for the Sheriff's Department. This is the case that I'm most passionate about because I love when justice is served, and I get really angry when I don't think justice was served properly, and I can't confidently say that justice was served in this case. And if you were in the Dassey had anything to do with this, if you think his confession was coerced, then that eliminates the entire narrative of Stephen Avery killing Teresa Halbach. You have to now come up with a whole different reason, a whole different story as to what happened to her. And then if he wasn't involved, how did Stephen do all this on his own without being caught or seen by anyone? No one heard a gunshot. No one heard screaming. No one heard a thing. No one saw a thing. Okay, so how does this all happen? I hope this video wasn't super hella long, but if it was, here's an example of what a podcast by me would be like. Just me yelling at my camera, so. At any rate, I hope this video was good. This is my tester video to see how I do with this. So let me know if you loved it, let me know if you hated it, but just let me know, so. All right, true crimerers, I will see you for the next one. Ta-ta for now, true crime or roomies.